Hi, this is Alan Zindel with Political Dharma, and it is Saturday, August 24th, 2024. By now, I'm sure you've heard the news that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has decided to suspend his campaign for the presidency and throw his support to Republican candidate Donald Trump. In this episode of Political Dharma, I'm going to be replaying for you some of the key moments of his speech, of Kennedy's speech, explaining his decision, and I'll give you some commentary on this, especially regarding where I think the movement in support of Kennedy's campaign could go in the future. But first, before I launch into that, I wanted to say something to my many viewers who have been supporters of Kennedy to one degree or another. I know many of you have been strong supporters of Kennedy, and you may find this change of events to be disillusioning maybe, or feel a little confused, or like the way forward is rather dark and maybe even losing some hope. And others have been maybe a little more skeptical of where Kennedy may be leading them, but wanting to hope, wanting to believe, and this may also set you back. And what I wanted to say is that hope, as I said in an earlier episode, to be an idealist is to choose to hope, and hope does not mean believing that everything is always going to go the way you hope it does, or that each particular moment the best thing is going to happen in the limited perspectives that we have. No, hope is a choice to believe that things can be better if we contribute to that betterment. It's always a choice, and a leader like Kennedy doesn't give you hope. A leader like Kennedy chooses to hope and to act on that hope by finding the best way that they can to move forward in being a force for good in the world. And what they do is they inspire you to recognize your own ability to choose to hope rather than to choose to act out of cynicism or despair, or to wallow in a sense of futility. They inspire you to recognize your own ability to choose to hope and to choose to do that, and what that feels like. And that's very important. The decision to choose to hope is something that enlivens our humanity. So I wanted to give you that message, and hopefully give you more inspiration for choosing to hope. And as I discussed the possibilities for the future of the Kennedy movement, I hope to give you further illumination on things that may, inspire you to continue your actions or to find ways forward. I'll quote you a saying of Jesus from the Christian Bible, which is that it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. And in the same way, it's better to light your candle, choose to hope, do the good that you can, rather than just dwelling on how dark everything seems to be. The more of us that choose to turn on our light, the less darkness there'll be, the more clear the way forward will be. All right, I'm going to turn now to Kennedy's speech, in which he discussed his reasons for suspending his campaign. It was a long speech. It was also delayed. He came in late, I think about over a half an hour late, and I did watch it in real time with my wife. We were quite moved at parts of it, even though we were distressed by other parts of it. But I'm going to cut to the chase in the key moments where he explained what his decision is and why he made that decision. Now, in the first part of the speech, he talked a lot about the achievements of volunteers in getting signatures. And my latest report is they actually got enough signatures to be on the ballot in all 50 states plus the District of Columbia. So he was thanking his volunteers for all the work they did, and he was assuring them that that work is not in vain, that it is, his campaign has made a difference and can make a difference. And so he was dedicating the first part of his speech to the volunteers. And he also discussed how the Democratic Party and the media, the corporate media, used a lot of undemocratic methods to try to harass and undercut his campaign, and that's why he no longer is going to be able to move forward in the way he hoped to. So given that prelude, then he discussed, he revealed what his decision was, and I'm going to play that part right now.
Many months ago, I promised the American people that I would withdraw from the race if I became a spoiler. A spoiler is someone who will alter the outcome of the election but has no chance of winning. In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to electoral victory in the face of this relentless systematic censorship and media control. So I cannot, in good conscience, ask my staff and volunteers to keep working their long hours or ask my donors to keep giving when I cannot honestly tell them that I have a real path to the White House. Furthermore, our polling consistently showed that by staying on the ballot in the battleground states, I would likely hand the election over to the Democrats with whom I disagree on the most existential issues: censorship, war, and chronic disease. Oh, I want everyone to know that I am not terminating my campaign. I am simply suspending it and not ending it. My name my name will remain on the ballot in most states. If you live in a blue state, you can vote for me without harming or helping President Trump or Vice President Harris. In red states, the same will apply. I encourage you to vote for me. And if enough of you do vote for me, and neither of the major party candidates win 270 votes, which is quite possible. In fact, today our polling shows them tying at 269 to 269. And I could conceivably still end up in the White House in a contingent election.
All right, not to belabor what you just heard, but he said he got in this saying that if he were to become a spoiler, meaning someone who has no realistic chance of winning but can alter the outcome of the election one way or the other, that he wasn't going to do it. And he said that's his main motivation, is not to be a spoiler in this race, and that he no longer saw a realistic path to the presidency, although he also said there was some chance that he could still win if enough people voted for him and created a contingent election. And he said he's going to keep his name on the ballot in most of the states and just withdrawing it from some of the states. So I'm going to talk about some of these points here. First of all, what is suspending a campaign? I'm going to turn to, I looked at several sources online to get the legal view of this, and they all said pretty much the same thing. This one was particularly clear, I think. And what is said, this is by Brian Corley, who's the supervisor of elections in Pasco County. Where is Pasco County? I'm not sure. I think it's in Florida. Yeah, it says right there in the seal. Under election law, the phrase suspending a campaign has no formal meaning. So in other words, it has no legal definition like withdrawing from a campaign would have. Essentially, it means that the candidate is choosing not to continue to try to win. Candidates who suspend their campaigns, this is again quoting selected parts of this website, can continue to raise money beyond what's needed to retire their campaign debts. If a candidate ended their campaign instead of merely suspending it, they might lose eligibility for federal matching funds. Now, that's 2 points which would explain why Kennedy is not withdrawing from the race formally, but simply saying he's not going to be trying to win. One is that he can continue to raise money, and they'll use that money for various purposes to further causes that he believes in. He didn't say that. I'm saying that. It allows them to continue to raise money, not just to pay off their campaign debts, but to do other things with. And it also, and he didn't say anything about this, although Nicole Shanahan in her recent interview earlier this week did say something about it, is that it can continue to leave the path forward for getting enough votes, that is 5% or better in the general election, for Kennedy to have eligibility for federal matching funds to help pay some of the debts for this year, and also to prospectively have campaign funds for the next presidential run. Down in there on the bottom, if the political climate changes dramatically, a suspended campaign could spring back into life, and that's what Kennedy had to say about that, which was that he wanted to keep his name on the ballot, and he wanted to encourage people to continue to vote for him, he was just going to suspend his campaign in particular states. But what does this mean to be eligible for public funding? I want to run a few things from the campaign finance laws of the Federal Elections Commission to talk about that a little bit. This is from the Legal Information Institute of Cornell Law University, and they're listing some of the code of the Federal Elections Commission's regulations down there. And the bottom where I've highlighted, it says that the candidate of a minor party in an election, an eligible candidate of a minor party is entitled to pre-election payments, and by payments they're talking about public funding, if he or she receives at least 5% of the total vote as the candidate of a minor party in the preceding election, whether or not she or he is running the same minor parties as the same, she is running as the same minor party's candidate in this election. I think they missed a word in there, or I did. So what that's saying there is that if Kennedy receives at least 5% of the popular vote, then Kennedy can claim that money 4 years from now, whether or not he's using the same party. And the party, of course, would be his We the People party. I assume that's what they would designate as their official party for this time around. Going on further in the elections code, the eligible candidate of a minor party whose candidate for the office of president in the preceding election of the total got 5% of the vote is eligible to receive pre-election payments. That is, not only is Kennedy eligible, but the party that he designates is eligible, even if they nominate a different candidate 4 years from now. So that could be somebody other than Kennedy, perhaps Nicole Shanahan, perhaps somebody else that can carry the torch. And then finally, a candidate of a new party who was a candidate for the office of president in at least 10 states in the preceding election may be eligible to receive pre-election payments if he or she received at least 5% in the total popular vote, etc. And here what they're saying is that if Kennedy decided to run as the candidate of a new party, and he was on the ballot in at least 10 states, which he clearly is, he's going to be, even if he withdraws his name from the states he mentioned, he'll still be on the ballot in nearly 40 states, maybe even 40. He would be eligible to receive that funding even as the candidate of a different minor party. And I want to give you the historical precedent that is most pertinent here. This is from the Wikipedia article on Ross Perot, who was a presidential candidate in 1992 and 1996. Now, in 1996, he didn't get as many votes as he did the first time around, but he got more than that 5%. If you look down at the article, in 1995, he founded the Reform Party and won their nomination for the 1996 presidential election. Because of the ballot access laws, he had to run as an independent on many state ballots. Perot received 8% of the popular vote in 1996. Now, I'm flagging this to show that Perot was not the candidate of the same party all across the states where he was on the ballot. He had to become an independent to get on the, he was running as an independent in certain states in order to get on their ballots, the same as Kennedy. Kennedy is running as the candidate of his party in some states and as an independent candidate in other states. So what happened with the Reform Party is that 4 years later, Ross Perot did not run as the candidate, and they had a different candidate, Pat Buchanan, not the best pick in my view, but this is from the Wikipedia article for the 2000 Reform Party presidential primaries. It says, following Ross Perot's impressive showing during the 1996 presidential election, that is, he got 8% of the popular vote, no electoral votes, the Reform Party of the United States of America became the country's third largest party, and their candidate would be entitled to receive $12.5 million, that is $21 million in 2023 in matching funds. So the gist of all this that I'm giving to you is that a possible way forward for the Kennedy campaign is that if he receives at least 5% of the popular vote in the upcoming general election, then he or his party and the candidate of his party, whether it's him or not, or he and a new party, could be eligible for public funding in the 2028 election. Now, I think that's an important thing, and it's reason to encourage people to vote for him where he is on the ballot to try to reach that threshold and have a better funded alternative party in the race in 2028. All right, let's go on with Kennedy's comments.
But in about 10 battleground states where my presence would be a spoiler, I'm going to remove my name. And I've already started that process and urge voters not to vote for me. It's with a sense of victory and not defeat that I'm suspending my campaign activities. Not only did we do the impossible by collecting 1 million signatures, we changed the national political conversation forever. Chronic disease, free speech, government corruption, breaking our addiction to war have moved to the center of politics. I can say to all who have worked so hard the last year and a half, thank you for a job well done. 3 great causes drove me to enter this race in the first place, primarily. And these are the principal causes that persuaded me to leave the Democratic Party and run as an independent. And now to throw my support to President Trump. The causes were free speech, a war in Ukraine, and the war on our children.
Okay, this was the clip where he talked about staying in the race other than in 10 battleground states. Now, which states would be battleground states? I'm sure you're interested to know if you're in one of those states or not, and maybe you already have some idea. So I'm going to play a map taken from the website for 270towin.com. 270 is the number of electoral college votes a candidate needs to win the election outright. Otherwise, if nobody gets that many electoral college votes, it goes to the House of Representatives, and that's what's called a contingent election, which Kennedy mentioned in his remarks. Here's the map. You see the states in tan, or as they said, I think, gold. This lists the 7 states that are generally regarded as swing states that could go either way, easily could go either way in a presidential election, either to the Republican or Democrat. And those states are in the American Southwest, Nevada and Arizona. And in the Midwest, up north there's the industrial states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And down there in the southeast is Georgia. So that's 7 states that are generally regarded as swing states. And the other 3 must be the states that just lean to the Republican or the Democrat, meaning the support for one party or the other is a little bit stronger than in the swing states, but still a large vote margin in those states could swing it to the other candidate. And that would be down there in North Carolina. It's light pink. That means it leans Republican, but it doesn't. It's still pretty close. And then the light blue states would be Minnesota and New Hampshire. So those are the 10 states that I believe that he's talking about. And he may have trouble, though, getting off the ballot in all those states. He did withdraw his petitions in Arizona. He withdrew his petition to get on the ballot. And in Pennsylvania, he dropped his case. There was a challenge to his being on the ballot based on his residency, and he informed the court that he wasn't going to continue to contest the case. And in Nevada, their deadline for withdrawing from the race, I think, has already passed. I think it passed earlier this week. So he may have trouble getting off the ballot in Nevada. He's already done what he has to get off the ballot in Arizona and Pennsylvania. And in the other states, there's still potential problems. I think in Michigan, he's the candidate of a party, the Natural Law Party, and it's up to them whether they take him off the ballot or not. He can request it, but it is really their decision, I believe. I may be wrong about that. It depends on the state election laws. So this could potentially be problematic for him. He may end up on the ballot in some of those states. And he may end up not on the ballot in some of the other states where he wants to be on the ballot, such as New York, if he continues to lose his court case there against the people trying to get him off the ballot in New York. Where else is he still I think in Illinois was the other one that I remember. There was a attempt to get him off the ballot that went to court, and there he already prevailed this week, I think just a couple of days ago. So he's going to be on the ballot in Illinois as well. So that's where that stands. And he said he's going to stay on the ballot in those, and he talked about changing the conversation around three causes that he got into the race to promote, and that was the war in Ukraine, free speech, and what he called the war on children, by which he means the epidemic of chronic illnesses among children in the United States. It's not happening the same way in the rest of the world, so there's something definitely happening here that's different, and that Trump's support for these causes is what animated him to make the decision that he did to support Trump. All right, let's go on to hear what else he has to say about that particular piece.
President Trump says that he will reopen negotiations with President Putin and end the war overnight as soon as he becomes president. This alone would justify my support for his campaign. Last summer, it looked like no candidate was willing to negotiate a quick end to the Ukraine war, to tackle chronic disease epidemic, to protect free speech, our constitutional freedoms, to clean corporate influence out of our government, or to defy the neocons and their agenda of endless military adventurism. But now one of the two candidates has adopted these issues as his own, to the point where he has asked to enlist me in his administration. I'm speaking, of course, of Donald Trump. In a series of long, intense discussions, I was surprised to discover that we are aligned on many key issues. In those meetings, he suggested that we join forces as a unity party. We talked about Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals. That arrangement would allow us to disagree publicly and privately and fiercely, if need be, on issues over which we differ, while working together on the existential issues upon which we are in concordance. I was a ferocious critic of many of the policies during his first administration, and there are still issues and approaches upon which we continue to have very serious differences. But we are aligned with each other on other key issues like ending the forever wars, ending the childhood disease epidemics, securing the border, protecting freedom of speech, unraveling the corporate capture of our regulatory agencies, getting the US intelligence agencies out of the business of propagandizing and censoring and surveilling Americans and interfering with our elections. Following my first discussion with President Trump, I tried unsuccessfully to open similar discussions with Vice President Harris. Vice President Harris declined to meet or even to speak with me.
All right, there he said that Trump did support these issues and asked Kennedy said he was going to enlist Kennedy in his administration to give Kennedy some ability to affect those issues. I think the issue of children's health is the one they're focusing on. Where you heard the beep there, I just cut off a little bit about he was explaining his discussions with Trump previous to this decision, which had been reported in the media, not always entirely accurately. It wasn't Kennedy who went to Trump seeking an endorsement. It was Trump who went to Kennedy to ask for an endorsement. And this is what Kennedy has said in various places. And talk about a unity party in that clip, and that Kennedy will be in this agreement over a unity party. Party, I guess they're just using as a general term and not in any specific sense of forming a political party or joining the Republican Party. What they're saying is that if Kennedy joins in the campaign and then is part of the administration, Kennedy is free to disagree with Trump publicly and privately, and that he's not pledging loyalty to Trump, which is something Trump has generally asked for from people he regards as his underlings. But I get the sense Trump has enough respect for Kennedy that he prefers to have the glow of the Kennedy name and Kennedy's status among some of his supporters. He prefers to have that glow to seeing him as somebody that, has to kiss his ring, so to speak. And Kennedy in this clip also mentioned that when they tried to reach out to the Harris administration to see what their response to their discussions with Trump might be and whether they, are willing to talk about their take on the issues that are important to Kennedy and whether they're willing to move on those or compromise in any way or give some kind of indication they're also willing to work on those issues. There was no response from the Harris administration. So this is why Kennedy made what he said is an agonizing decision to throw support to Donald Trump. Now, in my opinion, if this was me, I think I would have let it go at I am withdrawing from the swing states, keeping my name on and encouraging you to vote for me in the other states, hoping not to get a contingent election. I think that's out of reach if you're not running in the swing states because those would be the easiest to come in first. And if Kennedy doesn't come in first in a state, he's not going to get any electoral votes. Therefore, he's not going to be able to affect the electoral college vote. He's not going to affect the ability of the candidates to get the 270. Anyway, I think I would have left it at that I'm not going to throw my support to one candidate or the other. I'll let the voters decide that and just step back and say, vote for me in those other states. And in the states in which it could go one way or the other, I'll let the voters there determine it. That's what I would have done. But as we see in this next clip, Kennedy goes on to further give his reasons and further justify his reasons for throwing his support to Trump.
I watched generations of children get sicker and sicker. I had 11 siblings and I had 7 kids myself. I was conscious of what was happening in their classrooms and to their friends. And I watched these sick kids, these damaged kids. In that generation, almost all of them are damaged. And nobody in power seemed to care or to even notice. For 19 years, I prayed every morning that God would put me in a position to end this calamity. The chronic disease crisis was one of the primary reasons for my running for president, along with ending censorship in the Ukraine war. It's the reason I've made the heart-wrenching decision to suspend my campaign and to support President Trump. This decision is agonizing for me because of the difficulties it causes my wife and my children and my friends. But I have the certainty that this is what I've meant to do. And that certainty gives me internal peace, even in storms. Ultimately, the future, however it happens, is in God's hands and in the hands of the American voters and those of President Trump. If President Trump is elected and honors his word, the vast burden of chronic disease that now demoralizes and bankrupts the country will disappear. This is a spiritual journey for me. I reached my decision through deep prayer, through hard-nosed logic, and I asked myself, what choices must I make to maximize my chances to save America's children and restore national health? I felt that if I refused this opportunity, I would not be able to look myself in the mirror, knowing that I could have saved lives of countless children and reversed this country's chronic disease epidemic. I'm 70 years old. I may have a decade to be effective. I can't imagine that President Harris would allow me or anyone to solve these dire problems. After 8 years of President Harris, any opportunity for me to fix the problem will be out of my reach forever. President Trump has told me that he wants this to be his legacy. I'm choosing to believe that this time he will follow through. His son, his biggest donors, his closest friends, and all support this objective. My joining the Trump campaign will be a difficult sacrifice for my wife and children, but worthwhile if there's even a small chance of saving these kids. Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country and our children is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other. That's why I launched my campaign to unify America My dad and uncle made such an enduring mark on the character of our nation, not so much because of any particular policies that they promoted, but because they were able to inspire profound love for our country and to fortify our sense of ourselves as a national community held together by ideals. That's the spirit on which I ran my campaign and that I intend to bring into the campaign of President Trump. Instead of vitriol and polarization, I will appeal to the values that unite us, the goals that we could achieve if only we weren't at each other's throats. The most unifying theme for all Americans is that we all love our children. If we all unite around that issue now, we can finally give them the protection, the health, and the future that they deserve. Thank you all very much.
Okay, and that extended clip, and I put two minor cuts and blips where he talks more extensively about some of the things, the topics in those clips. He talked about the childhood epidemic of illnesses, how he has prayed to that God would give him some role in trying to mitigate that crisis. He says he's putting it in God's hands. Sounds a little skeptical that Trump might honor his word, but he said he has to at least open that opportunity that Trump will follow through on doing something about this so that Kennedy can make a difference. He talked about how he made the decision, how he prayed over it, and that he won't have another chance like this. If Harris becomes the president, it might be another 8 years before he has any chance to do anything. And at 70 years old, by 78, he won't have, although Trump is 78, so I'm not sure if that really holds true. Kennedy could well be working on issues well into his 80s, if his health and sanity hold up. He talked about, and I cut a little bit about this, but he talked about the legacy of his family, especially his uncle John F. Kennedy Jr. and his father Robert F. Kennedy Sr. That's not John F. Kennedy Jr., it's just John F. Kennedy, the president, and Robert F. Kennedy, his father, and how he wants to bring that spirit to the Trump administration, and implying that whether or not Trump is going to abide by that kind of spirit of talking about what unites people, especially our love of our children, and I would say grandchildren in the case of a lot of us, that he's going to bring that to the administration. He's going to hope to be a positive influence on that, and hoping that Trump will follow through on this. So what I would say in summary about this speech is that it was, I can understand his reasons for doing this. So even though I said I would have done it differently, I think, being a different person than Kennedy and having different views of how the future may play out, or how things may work out if you make one decision as opposed to another. I think he gave very cogent reasons for doing what he did. I can understand what he did. I can't say that he's entirely wrong given his perspective. I can't even say, it's not the right thing to do just because I wouldn't do it. Doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. We could well see that his hope is not misplaced, that maybe Trump does follow through if he wins, and that he's able to turn this childhood disease epidemic around. You never know. This is, I would say, it is the best political speech I've heard in my life. That's discounting speeches from the past that I have heard in recordings maybe, but I don't think it's the best speech in the terms of, say, soaring rhetoric or good pacing. It was overlong at points, and I think he went into his positions on issues a little too long given the purpose of the speech. But I would say it's the best speech from the standpoint of his evident sincerity, and because of the truth value of this, that he's told the truth about these issues. I agree with his take on a lot of these issues. On the things he said, I couldn't pick out anything in particular that I thought was untrue. So his obvious sincerity, and you could see the emotion in his eyes and his voice there at the end, his sincerity and the truth value of this. I don't think this story is over by a long shot, and I'll be interested to see how both Kennedy's future unfolds as well as the future of his movement, and how the vote turns out, and whether that gives the opportunity for a new party to emerge in the future. All of this, and I'll also be turning back again to talk about how things are going with the other third-party candidates, especially in the Libertarian Party and in the Green Party. All right, thanks again for watching, and I hope to come back sometime soon to catch you up on other events. All right, thank you.
With ease, I see the chains are breaking. We gained our focus, the moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.